Hi there, can everybody hear me okay? Hi there, I just wanted to make sure everyone can hear me. Thumbs up.
Yeah, I can't.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for whoever just responded. Okay, perfect. I think we have 11, maybe one more. Okay. Perfect. Thank you for all your responses. Sorry about being late. I think there was a little bit of a mix-up with multiple counts, so it was totally on us. So thank you all for sticking with it. I'm not sure if you can see me. I think I have a video up. Feel free to post your video as well if you'd like. So I thought maybe what I would do is just do a quick background on, and then there are a couple of questions that I just want to get through, and I'll kind of go through those quickly just because we're starting a little bit late, and then just open it up for Q&A. And you guys can basically ask me anything that you want. Does that sound good with everybody?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so the quick background on me is my name is Mallory Downing. I'm from Ohio originally. I went to undergrad at Indiana University, and I had a dual major in finance and economics, and I had a minor in music. So between my junior and senior year of college, I had an internship at Lehman Brothers, which was a big investment bank at the time. Not sure how familiar you guys are with the space as a group. Lehman Brothers went bankrupt about a month after my internship ended. So when I went back, I joined the same team, the same group, but it was called Barclays. So I started at Barclays. I worked for a year in New York, and then I transferred to our London office, and I worked there for about 3 years. And the entire time I was working in an industry group, I was covering financials, so banks, insurance companies, specialty finance, so kind of like the fintech world. So pretty good mix of different sectors. And I was specifically focused on M&A. So after banking, so I made it all the way through to an associate. We can talk about that if you have questions. Most people do sort of a 2+2 program where they move on to private equity. But I stuck around and I made it to an associate, and then I quit after about 4 years and went to get my MBA at Columbia Business School. So I just graduated in 2015 from Columbia, and my focus at Columbia was on value investing. So I'm currently working at a hedge fund in New York doing long-short equity investing, basically. So I've been through investment banking. I've interviewed for it. I've interviewed candidates. So I think that's probably the closest experience that this group will be interested in. So I'm happy to answer any questions about anything in sort of the finance realm. Actually, maybe before I go into some of these questions, would everyone just want to sort of introduce themselves and say if they're in high school, if they're in college, what year they're in, and sort of what they're generally interested in? That might give me a little bit of a better sense to sort of tailor the discussion around. So,
okay.
I'll
start first.
Okay.
So I am going to be a junior. I go to Cornell University, and I am interested in investment banking. Not specifically, I thought about M&A. Okay. Oh, my name is I forgot my name. Alejandra.
Okay, perfect. Got you. Alrighty.
Hello, my name's Alec Ventries. I'm going to be a junior at the University of Michigan, and I'm also interested in M&A for investment banking.
Got it. Okay, perfect.
Hello, my name is Mary Chen. I'm a rising junior at Cornell University, and like the previous two, also very interested in investment banking, particularly mergers and acquisitions.
Got it.
Hi, my name is Jessica. I go to NYU Stern, and I'm also interested in investment banking, particularly the Consumer Retail Group and TMT.
Okay, perfect.
Hi, I'm Robert. I'll be a junior at Colby College this fall, and I'm also interested in investment banking.
Alrighty. Great. I think there's like a few more people.
Hi, my name is Ali Chen. I'm a rising junior at NYU Stern, and like everyone else so far, I'm interested in investment banking, and I'm looking more into joining maybe a coverage group.
Got it.
Hi, I'm Laura. I'm a junior at Colby College, and I'm interested in investment banking. No specific area yet. I just wanted to get a nice overview of everything.
Got it. That's good.
I'm Lindsay. I'm only going to be a junior in high school, and so I'm just starting to see what I want to do. So I'm interested in looking at finance.
We were two on the
Just in
line before. Okay. Anyone else online?
Hi, I'm Eileen. I'm from the University of Michigan. Like everyone else, I'm also interested in M&A. Maybe also some other coverage groups, but I don't know yet.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Jenny. I'm from the University of Michigan, and I'm interested in healthcare investment banking.
Okay. Great. So it seems like we have a pretty good mix of schools, but everyone is focused on banking, which is awesome. You guys are totally ahead of the game. And Lindsay is even more ahead of the game. So I'll try and focus sort of on where you guys are. So you guys are probably going into the recruiting season right now for your internships. So I'll try and focus most of my time on that. But stop me at any point. I'm going to kind of tick through these questions somewhat quickly, so you guys can get to questions at the end. But if something pops up when I'm talking, just feel free to interrupt me. Doesn't matter. That's good. We want to be interactive. So the first question is why I chose a career in my industry. So I think that when I kind of think of my life in 5 and 10 year increments. And so when I was thinking about where I wanted to be in 10 years, it wasn't necessarily banking, but it was definitely something in finance. And I thought I would want to be running my own money someday. So either private equity, or now I'm in public equities. Venture capital is also a different sort of route into that. And sort of what was keeping me from where I was in sort of undergrad to where I wanted to be was learning sort of this language of finance. So it was important for me to get that base, and banking is just quite frankly the best boot camp, the best finance boot camp that you can do. That sort of gets you up to speed as quick as possible. So that was kind of the impetus. It's a great springboard. That being said, banking changes a ton from when you're an analyst and you're doing a lot of the sort of modeling and putting presentations together. It changes a lot from that role into a senior role, which is a lot more sales oriented, and you're sort of building relationships. So you kind of have to think about if you want to ride that wave through your career or if you want to move. So investment banking is a great place if you want to sort of build a career there, but it also sets you up so well for anything else in finance. So I just think it's a really, really good path to pursue out of undergrad. So where I am now, I'm working at a hedge fund. And the path that I sort of took to pursue this, so I knew I didn't want to do investment banking, so I decided that I was going to quit my job, and I quit in February, and most MBA programs don't start till fall, so I had like 6 months where I was like, okay, I need to do something to really figure out what I wanted. And at the time, I thought I wanted to do either something in impact investing, which is like investing in sort of social good, or in emerging markets. So I took that time and I volunteered in Ethiopia. I took a fellowship in Mumbai, India for a couple of months. And I took that time to sort of figure out, is this what I really want to do? Turns out it wasn't. So that was not a lost opportunity, but it sort of helped me figure it out. And it was a pretty riskless way to do that because I had already transitioned, and it was one of those times when I could sort of take more of a risk because I was already going to business school, and it sort of made sense. So there were those two things, and then in the middle of business school, I decided, oh, maybe I should go work at a mutual fund. So I spent my summer at PIMCO, another really great firm, but it just wasn't the right role for me. It wasn't the right environment. So I got an offer to go back and decided not to because it just didn't feel right. So I felt like there was a lot of sort of trying things out and testing this or that to really figure out what I wanted to do. And I spent a lot of time and pain and anguish doing all of that stuff. But in the end, it was definitely the right thing to do because I'm really, really happy with where I am now. So I would just say when you think about what you want to do with your career, a lot of it is going to be figuring out what you don't want to do. And that is not a loss. That is very much a win because sort of narrowing those things down is good to do early on. So that's sort of my path. What I learned about my journey is I did a little soul searching when I wrote down notes for this question. But a couple of big takeaways I would say is if you want to do investment banking, you know, take that risk on yourself now because you should be getting that experience from the ground up. And that is, you know, believe in yourself to sort of take that risk and really, really go after that. You know, just put everything you have into doing that because that'll really set you up for the rest of your career. The second thing I would say is do your research. So when you're looking at JP Morgan, for instance, if you want to go there, talk to as many people as you can possibly talk to. So every alumni from your school works at JP Morgan. Every single person you can find on LinkedIn. I respond to so many LinkedIn messages to people that I've never met before because they just want to know about the industry. And I remember being there, and I'm more than happy to talk to them. So just get to know the organizations, like the top 2 or 3 that you really want to work for. Get to know them really well and make personal connections with like the right sort of people at those firms. And then the second thing is read the Wall Street Journal every day. Think of maybe it's not an investor, but think of a specific industry. So some of you called out that you're interested in retail or you're interested in healthcare. Focus on those things and be able to reference deals that happen. So when you're in your interviews and you're Jenny and you're interested in healthcare, you can say, oh, I, you know, saw that Pfizer bought XYZ at a 10 times multiple, and I thought that was awesome because of XYZ. So just, you know, take it to the next level and be curious and be able to prove that through your interviews. So that's just basically doing your research, which you'd be surprised at how many people don't actually do that. So that'll be pretty impressive. And then the last thing I would say is just think really long term. So think about where you want to be in 10 years and how your next step is going to set you up for that. So if you want to do healthcare, if you want to work at Pfizer one day in their corporate strategy group, you should definitely be focusing on healthcare. Maybe you don't know, maybe you're not super focused, so an M&A role might be better. Or maybe you think, you know, doing macro trading is super interesting, so maybe you should be working in a debt product group outside of school. So just, you know, connect the dots because that's something that's pretty basic, but I don't think that a lot of people necessarily do that. And then the last thing is don't get caught in the rat race. I'd say going into banking, there's sort of this pressure to work there for 2 years, and then maybe leave for 2 years, do a private equity program, or do something else. But do what you think fits your story. So I know a lot of the stuff that we've been working on in the finance program is, what's your brand? So do things that back up that brand rather than things that seem like it's part of the program. It seems like it's what everyone else does, because I kind of veered off that program, and I think that only helped me in the long run, because you don't want your profile to look like everyone else's. You want your profile to be genuine. So just focus on that. Okay, so the next big bucket, and this is kind of the last big bucket, I guess, the most important skills and characteristics to be successful in banking. So they're kind of the basics, come in with a good attitude, be willing to work, do work, because at the analyst level, there'll be a lot of that. So you have to sort of just be willing to put in the hours. Sorry, one second. Tell you the job very much. Okay. So do the work, and then I think the second most important thing is focus on getting to know finance. So, like I said, finance is just a language. So it's really just about, learning the language. And accounting is so important. It's really not that fun when you're learning it. I actually love accounting now because it just makes sense. And it is the language of finance. So, spend time really getting to know that. And once you know finance, then you have to translate that into being creative with finance. So I think what a lot of people do when they go into interviews, and where they might sort of be led astray, is there are numbers in front of you, and I can calculate XYZ ratio, and you're just really focused on the numbers. And that's good, because that's absolutely critical. But at the end of the day, that's a commodity skill. And what people really want to know is that you're a critical thinker, and that you can actually use those numbers, and looking at a balance sheet, you can understand the story. So you can look at 10 numbers and know what's happening with the company. You can know if they're growing, if they're declining, if they're buying a bunch of, equipment. If not, you need to take it to the next level and sort of understand the story behind the numbers. So I think that that's another big leap that a lot of people don't necessarily make sort of in the early stages. So if you can make that connection, that will be really, really impressive and a very valuable skill that you bring to whatever team you're working with. And then the last thing is just to have a thick skin, because banking is one of those environments where you don't sleep a whole bunch. It's really high pressured, and there's just a cultural attitude where people might not be using their heads at all times. So you just kind of have to have a little bit of a thick skin, and that will for sure help you later in life. But I wouldn't be surprised if, things might get a little heated just because there's a lot of pressure. So that is also something to just sort of keep in mind if you go to this industry. Okay. So I'm going to stop there also because I need to regain my voice back a little bit. But if I have some other talking points, but I'm going to stop there, and anyone can feel free to ask any questions about that or something totally unrelated. I'm pretty flexible and happy to answer any questions. Who wants to kick it off? Oh, geez, I'm just seeing the chat. Okay. Okay, so Jake is a Cornell student, healthcare investment banking. You have a lot of healthcare investment banking. Okay. So you guys can just talk and interrupt me, or go through the chat. That's fine. So what made me decide to ultimately leave investment banking? I think that the biggest thing for me was, so in the particular group that I was in, so I was in Financial Institutions M&A, which it depends, it's bank dependent, but it does have pretty bad hours. So I'd say on average, just to give you guys sort of a benchmark for what you might expect, I got into the office around 9:30 to 10 a.m. and I left on average on a weeknight around midnight. So that might be better. I would say I never left the office before around 10 p.m. And then there were obviously the all-night outliers. So that is definitely something that deters a ton of people because it's just really like a physically draining job. But I decided to leave because I felt that the job that my bosses were doing, so the people that were running the group, and the job becomes very sales oriented as you become more senior. So these guys weren't really in the weeds thinking about the numbers and, you know, structuring deals. They were kind of out there selling business. And that wasn't the kind of job that I wanted to do long term. So it took me probably a year and a half to realize that I didn't want to be my boss. And once that kind of sets in, you need to start making moves to do something else. So I was kind of put off track because I went to London for a couple of years, so that was reinvigorating. And I was at Barclays at a really exciting time when Bob Diamond was there, and there was a ton going on. And then Bob Diamond left, and you know things were just kind of going downhill, and I didn't really want to be my boss, so I was like, oh, this is not going in the direction I wanted to. So that's in the end why I left. Anybody else?
Hello?
Hello.
Okay. Hi, Mallory. My name is Allie, and I'm calling from NYU Stern. So I actually had a question about LinkedIn. So you mentioned that you were very willing to reach out to people that contacted you through LinkedIn, but how appropriate would it be to find alumni through LinkedIn and either message them or email them? What do you think would be a better way to kind of reach out to people through LinkedIn?
I like LinkedIn. I think that that's a really good way to connect with people because then you can sort of see their experience and their background. So if you have an alumni database where you have their emails, that might, you know, I would say, okay, I'll put it this way actually. To generalize, I think the older generation probably responds more to email. But if you're trying to contact someone that's a couple years out, I think that LinkedIn is probably a better way to reach out. But don't limit yourself to just alumni. Like if you see someone, you know, probably you want it to be like someone a little bit more junior, but if you see someone that is doing the exact thing that you want to do, reach out to them. Cold LinkedIn people. I do that all the time. It's like a 20% hit rate, but if you do enough of them, you'll get someone.
Okay, got it. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Jake, No, go ahead. You can do Jake afterwards.
Okay. Okay. Hi, my name is Michelle. I'm also calling from NYU Stern. Going back to your experience at Barclays, I was wondering why you specifically chose the FIG group.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I wish I had a better reason for that. I wanted to do a group that was not like your standard industry group. I had a lot of trouble deciding between industry and products. I don't know. It sounds like a lot of people want to do industry groups here, but I was really struggling with that decision. And it was actually my mom was in finance, and she was the one who was like, "Listen, you just need this core skill. Do M&A. That's what's going to help." So that kind of eliminated all the product groups for me because of her advice, quite frankly. And then FIG was sort of off the beaten path, and FIG is kind of this weird group that a lot of people are, you know, not attracted to, and because of that, I was really attracted to it. And then I just met all the people that worked there. Honestly, it was probably like 75% of the people that I met. I really liked them. I had great mentors throughout my career. And I actually followed my boss to London. That's why I went up there in the end, because he went there. So it was really like kind of because I thought it was cool, and then mostly because of the people I met.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. And you should, I mean, unless you have like a really specific industry focus, because you know, that's what you want to do long term, or it's your major or something like that. Go in with an open mind and meet people, because your life is going to be 10 times better if you work for somebody that is reasonable and that you like. So I would just say. Okay, so Jake says, I'm working at Pfizer and have sat in with the M&A dev team. So I'm wondering, what is the difference between working? Yes. Okay, so that's a good question. So if you're working in investment banking versus working what we would say corp dev, so that's in like an internal corporate M&A team. So like a lot of the big companies like Pfizer or GE has a huge M&A team. It will be slightly different work. So if you do an M&A deal, the reality is that a lot of the large banks will be mandated to certain deals because GE needs financing, or GE might need financing, or Pfizer might need financing, so they have to get the banks on board. So there's a little bit of reciprocity, and that's just the reality of how that works. But in general, if you are in banking, you're going to have the whole industry at your disposal, and you are going to be the middleman between all of the different buyers and sellers. So, you know, company X might not even know that they need company Y, but as a banker, your job and your, you know, civil duty is to tell them that they do need each other and why they need each other. So it's not like you're a market maker, but you can kind of think of it in that way, because you are really the middleman who's shaping the way the industry works. So that's in practice how it should work. In terms of type of work, if you're at an internal fund versus a bank, you'll still be doing financial models, so you'll still be learning the language of finance, as I say it. You will be doing less of sort of, well, it depends. You'll probably be doing less of this pitching, so like high in the sky idea, Google and Amazon should merge together. Like that's something a banker would maybe go present to Google. You know, like we have all these kind of crazy ideas, so you'll probably do a little bit less of that. But the type of work will be the same. I think that the benefit of working at a huge bank is you get exposure to all the different other parts of the bank. And I think that in general, the training program is a little bit of a higher caliber. So I would probably put the investment banking experience a little bit above corporate development. Most people go into corporate development after they've done a couple years of banking because you get a hard training skill. But the work is very, very, very similar. And it's better to be a client than it is to be the advisor in some cases, because as an advisor, you are always at the whim of your client. So that is another downside of banking. So it's just kind of pros and cons. Okay. And then I think Mary has another question that says, now that you're working at a long-short hedge fund, what do you think of students going into hedge funds directly versus IB? Okay, that's really tough. Hedge funds are not set up to train you, and I think that doing banking is the best and unparalleled training program that you will ever get, not only because there's like 3 months of training before you start an analyst program, but the sort of working at a bank, you sort of learn how to operate in an institution. Those softer skills of sort of, you know, knowing how to do things properly in a business context are really hard to learn unless you have someone sort of hand-holding you through the process. So banking is really, really good at setting people up for operating for the business context. So unless you have a specific background where you can model like nobody's business, and that's, you know, a commodity skill for you right now, and you don't need that kind of training, and you can sort of catch on really quickly to, you know, how to operate. And I'm talking about things like setting up meeting planners and how to be structured about your call notes, and, you know, really, really simple things go a long way. So that's kind of my thought on going directly to a hedge fund. Mary, did that answer your question? I'm not sure if it did. Oh, 0.72. Yeah, that's true, actually. I know someone who went and worked there as undergrad. Oh. Okay, I think 0.72 is a really specific program in that you kind of work directly with your PM. So at least that's how it was at FCC. Because there are different little pods, and maybe it's like a PM and an analyst, or two analysts, and that PM gets to choose, you know, what analyst they want working for them. So unless you find someone who's going to really teach you, and there's that program, then that might be fine. But I would say generally, 0.72 might be a little bit different. Hedge funds just like aren't really set up to provide that for people. Oh, good question. Boutique banks versus bulge brackets. I personally think that boutique banks should be preferred over bulge brackets for M&A deals, purely because a lot of banks have this reciprocity thing where if you basically lend them money, then you're going to get the advisory role. So that is, you know, not based on credentials, it's based on something different. So I think there are two things happening. So the quick overview, which you guys probably all know about, which would be important for your interviews. But in 2008, starting with Bear Stearns and Lehman Brothers. Before that, there were 5 monoline investment banks. So it was Bear, Lehman, Goldman, Morgan, and Merrill. And all 5 of those were kind of thought of to be not boutiques, but not universal. Yeah, sorry guys. But they were kind of thought of to be where you go for really, really good advice. And then they also have this really great trading platform. And they were kind of this other level. They were one level, and then you have the universal banks, like a JP Morgan and a Bank of America. And then you had the boutiques. So the monolines more or less have gone away. So now you just have these two like really different models, right? So the boutiques don't have a balance sheet, which means that they can't really lend anybody money. And then the universal banks are JP Morgan, where they have everything under the sun. So I think that there's a really high caliber of people at JP Morgan and B of A. And I think that those banks will always get deals because they're issuing debt to GE once a year. So that's just the way that it works. Unless there's some change to like Glass-Steagall, for instance, that's not going to change. I think that there's also, I know that more and more candidates are going to boutique banks. And that is a trend that's kind of changed since I've actually gone into banking. There's a really, really high quality at boutique banks. You're probably going to be working on a little bit of smaller deals just because of that whole reciprocity thing that I was talking about with the larger banks. That's more important for bigger deals. So you might be exposed to smaller deals. It might be a little more niche-y. So, not sort of your mainstream industry groups, but something that's, Jeffries is really good at this particular sector of healthcare or whatever it is. I think the hours are slightly better at a boutique bank. I'm just being quite honest with you guys on this stuff. And I think the pay might be a little bit better as well. So those are kind of all of the pros and cons. So it's just a little bit of a different structure. Oh, and your question wasn't actually about people going into issues, it was about companies. Okay, so the answer is probably still the same, right? So companies that need a lot of financing, they're going to go where they can get better rates. So unless there's like a regulatory change, I'm not sure that shift will be massive for the larger guys. I'll just put it that way. Alejandra, have you been researching this and seen something different, or is this just sort of out of curiosity?
Yeah, so I read an article on the Wall Street Journal, and it was talking about how since 2010, for deals that were over $25 billion, it was like 15 out of 22 have involved boutique banks. And then basically the article was just posing the question of, could it be that, executives are looking more to have boutique banks work for them instead of bulge brackets? So I just kind of wanted your take on that.
Yeah, I don't see that necessarily. I haven't looked at the league tables. This is something that you guys should definitely be looking at for interviews. You can go to, I think, Data Monitor. There are a ton of different sources. You can probably get them through your universities, where you just Google league tables, banking, M&A, healthcare, and you can see what, I think it's by like total deal size, and that'll give you an indication of who's getting all the deals. I bet the top 5 are still going to be sort of the standard Goldman, JP, B of A, and it'll vary by industry group. So maybe Sagen is really good at healthcare, so they're going to be number 1. So that potentially could happen, but I haven't necessarily picked up on that trend.
Thank you.
That's a good. You know what? That's a really good question to ask when you're interviewing. Let's see what your interviewers say. Okay. Anyone else have any questions? You probably have time for a few more. You can ask me like interview questions. You can ask me anything about finance, like anything.
I have a question about interviews.
Okay.
Okay, it's Jessica here. And I was wondering what you think the number one question that candidates struggle with the most.
Sorry, the number one question the candidate should what?
That they'll struggle with the most during an interview.
Oh, boy. Okay. So it probably depends on your background. If I see that you've been exposed to finance or anything, my first question for you will be to connect the three financial statements. So how do they all work together? So that you definitely need to have down pat. That should just be something that's easy. I think a lot of candidates on the qualitative side, they struggle with really, really basic things, which is surprising. Like, why do you want to do investment banking? Why this firm? My gosh, if you're going into an interview, you should know the CEO's name, and you should probably like drop it in the interview sometime and be like, hey, so what do you think about Lloyd's announcement yesterday? I don't know. Like show that you're interested in the actual company. And then the weakness question is also pretty tough. So the weakness question is not to say, hey, my weakness is I'm a perfectionist, and that's actually a strength. Like that's not at all what that question is about. The question is to say, my weakness is XYZ, and I realize that because of A, I tackled it because of B, and I have overcome it, or am starting to overcome it as displayed in this reason. So it's more like, how do you improve yourself rather than, I'm basically perfect. So I think that those questions, if you don't really nail those in the right way, that could be sort of a red flag. And then I'll say just one other thing on sort of the technical or the more technical side. A lot of times we'll ask people, just, you know, what's your favorite product that you buy? You might say shoes. I love buying shoes. And then you say, okay, let's start a shoe company. How many shoes are you going to make? What's the price? How much is it going to cost to make a shoe? So what is your profit? How many are you going to sell? How are you going to raise money to make shoes? So, okay, then what's your return on equity? Okay, is that a good investment for XYZ? So it's like really, we would always ask this question, a really basic understanding of how finance works and how companies, like what companies need to, you know, live and breathe is funding basically, and how you sort of think about what's good, what's bad. So, you know, you should know all your numbers, you should know your accounting, but then you should also be able to sort of think critically about that. And making that step, if you can't really like connect those two things, that's also sort of a red flag. And you might need to do some mental math in interviews, but hopefully it's not too bad. And in the real world, you always have a calculator, so you don't have to worry about that. But unfortunately, that's part of the interview process. So maybe beef up. Oh boy, okay. So this is probably our last question. Mary says, can you give an example of a good and a bad answer for why banking? Oh, okay. Yes. So a good answer for why banking is I have grown up around finance. My mom is in portfolio management, and from a really young age, I've been investing in stocks. So I'm fascinated with the world of finance and how things work. I went to school and I got an undergrad degree in finance and economics. And I had an internship, or I was involved in the club where we invest in stocks, or we do banking exercises, and I became the president because I loved it so much. And then I talked to 5 different people at your bank, and I just know it's the right fit for me. So you're showing that it's always been an interest of yours. You have improved upon that interest by coursework and clubs and outside activities or internships. And then I really want to work for you, and I've talked to all these people, and I'm sure, I know. That's a really good answer. If a bad answer is, I really like finance, you know, it's tough, and I like doing things, you know, I like the really aggressive environment, and I don't know, just not having a good, you can say things, but unless you have a rational backup to why that's true, it just falls flat. So you need to say what you want to say and then back it up. So unless you do that, I'd say that's kind of a bad answer. Okay, and last question is, do you think we will have brain teasers in interviews? I hate the brain teasers, but unfortunately, it happens. So in when I give interviews, I don't give brain teasers because I think I don't think that's like a good indication, but some people do. I think more than having brain teasers, you'll get accounting questions, and you'll get like mental math, like more mental math following an investment through, you know, how do you raise equity, how do you raise debt, what is a quick calculation of return on equity, or your your leverage ratio, or I would say that your questions will probably be more geared towards that kind of stuff. He definitely, bridge users are a possibility. I would also add to that list, I've been in interviews before where they asked me if I was familiar with a certain topic. And I would say yes, yes, yes. And then we get to a topic that I knew nothing about. And the interviewer would be like, perfect. And then he would take, 10 minutes and teach me this new thing. So in my interview in particular, I was at PIMCO, and he was teaching me about forward rates, which I wasn't familiar with. So he does this teaching, and then at the end he asks me, okay, if interest rates do X and blah 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 does Y, what happens to the forward rate? So he expects you to learn and catch on quickly. So all of these things are kind of based on how quickly can you catch on to things and how creative can you be with coming up with an answer. So those things might be thrown at you. And I would say more than getting the answer right is sharing your thought process, because that's what those questions are getting at. So just tell them how you're thinking about it and don't stress out about getting the right answer. Okay. I think that's probably, unless anyone has any dying questions, I think that's probably where we will end it. Although I know we started a little bit late.
Hi, Mallory. I have one last question. Yes. What do you think has been the most challenging or the most rewarding thing in your experience in banking?
Challenging has been, definitely. Okay. Challenging has been deal fatigue. So there was a deal that I worked on in London, and I think from beginning to end, it started off as a buy side, so we were going to acquire another company, and then we lost the buy side bid. So then it became an aggressive growth strategy where we were going to try and grow, and then the market kind of fizzled out. So then we were like, okay, maybe we should do strategic options, and so we were evaluating strategic options, and then we decided we were going to sell the company. So it went from a buy side to a sell side in a year. So then our sale process lasted about a year. And then the sale process didn't actually happen. And so then after that, we went into a runoff strategy where we just ran the business off. And over the course of all those things changing, it was probably 2.5 years. And it's just really hard to live with something for a really long time and get discouraged that nothing's going to happen. And so that was a real challenge. And it doesn't sound that bad, but it really is tough to just sort of be drudging through the same thing over and over and over again with no end in sight. Especially in banking, you want to do deals. That's the whole thing. And then you just don't do deals. And then the most rewarding thing, I think you get to a point in banking where at first it seems really overwhelming. There's all this stuff that you don't know. And then after 6 months to a year, you're like, oh, I kind of get it. I'm feeling, that I'm moving with everyone else and I'm understanding. And then after 2.5 years or whatever your time frame is, you're like, I am king of the world. There's nothing that I can't handle, because the learning curve is just so steep and you see the same patterns over. So once you start recognizing patterns, it's really easy to catch on to things and see what a company's doing and how they're thinking. And once you get to that stage, that is super, super rewarding, because you just feel like you have a really strong sense of being able to tackle any challenge, no matter what it is. And you have a strong, you're just very confident at that point. So
okay. Thank you for sharing.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I think we have a couple other questions. So, are we expected to know all the calculations for ROE, ROA in interviews? Yes. I would say so. So all the calculations, when you go into an interview, I don't know what all of them are, but I like return on equity because I worked in financial institutions, and that's how banks are valued. They're valued on their return on equity to their price to book. So I think that no matter what kind of company I'm looking at now, I think that's a great metric to look at. So maybe you pick like 2 or 3 and know those really well. But then you should have sort of an understanding of profitability ratios, of leverage ratios, working capital ratios, and then your multiples, so your general like price to earnings, price to book, EV to EBITDA, know the difference between enterprise value and equity value. That's a really important concept. So all those sort of corporate finance things you should probably have a decent grasp of. But if you don't have, you guys probably all have finance backgrounds or Cornell, well, maybe some of you. If that is in your resume anywhere, you should expect more finance questions, definitely. Okay, and then Mary says, I've not taken a finance accounting course. I should probably have read that first before I answered, and have self-taught some technicals. So the caliber of questions you'll get. Okay, so if it's not in your background, you probably won't get super technical questions. They'll ask you if you know how to value a company, and you should say, yes, I do. And the way that you can value a company are multiples, DCF, transactions, like precedent transactions. So a couple of different ways to value a company. And then they might say, okay, how do you do a DCF? And then you should probably be familiar with the concept of present value and sort of be able to explain the basic calculations and steps in a DCF. So I would say those are sort of the entry-level questions for someone that doesn't have a finance background. That's kind of the entry question that you might be able to get. And there's a really thin book called The Vault Guide to Finance. I don't know if you guys have heard of this yet, but it's 100 pages, and it goes through all of these concepts in a really succinct and quick way. And that's great to sort of get you up to speed on the types of finance questions that you should know for these interviews. So Mary, I hope that helps. Okay. This is my last call for questions. Anybody else have anything?
Hi, yeah. So you actually mentioned that it took you a little bit, like a while, to kind of figure out what you really wanted to do. But I guess looking back on your whole experience, what is some tips that you would recommend in order to figure out what you're really passionate about? Or did you have like a mentor who really guided you?
So my mom is in finance, so she was sort of a de facto mentor for me. I think I realized when I realized I didn't want to do banking, I knew that, school was an easy way to pivot. So that's why I kind of went down that path. But then I did a lot of things in between banking, school, and where I am now to figure that out. And honestly, the best thing that I did was just try a bunch of stuff and figure out what I didn't want to do. So the biggest thing was going to PIMCO. I thought that was going to be it, right? Like that's a great fund, really good job, and for whatever reason, it just fit. So knocking things off the list is really valuable. My mom also told me from a very young age that no career is a straight path. So when I said, don't give into the rat race, there's this idea in banking where you do 2 years in banking, and then you do 2 years in private equity, then you do 2 years in business school, and then you start your career. Well, don't give into that. Do what you're interested in. Figure it out earlier. It's so much better to figure out what you want earlier than later. So I would say that I gave up about 6 months of income and experience in banking in order to try as many things as possible to figure that out. And that was really, really valuable. That's probably the answer.
Okay, thank you so much.
No problem. All right, guys. So I'm one of the coaches with Modern Gales. I think that my information should be available to everybody. And I'm more than happy to like answer any questions or emails or texts or phone calls. So if you guys think of any other questions later on, I'm super happy to be a reference guide for you as you go through the process. So please feel free to reach out. Okay. All right, perfect. All right, well, I'm going to close out the call, but everyone have a really great evening and best of luck with interviews that are coming up soon. I'm sure you guys are going to kill it. You're really ahead of the game. So good luck. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good night.